Hello, everybody. This is Didi Will from InTheKnowRadio.com. Today, it is my distinct pleasure to interview William Horton. Should I say Dr. Will?
Either. Dr. Will's fine.
Dr. Will. Dr. Will Horton has a PhD in psychology and is considered by many to be the world's leading Neuro Linguistic Programming trainer, otherwise known as NLP, a licensed psychologist, certified alcohol and drug counselor, and master hypnotist. Dr. Will was one of the few non-law enforcement people asked to attend the FBI Crisis Hostage Negotiation course at the FBI Academy. Dr. Horton's passion for NLP and hypnosis came from his personal experience. Not only had he used NLP and hypnosis to overcome alcohol and drug addiction, he also used these techniques to win numerous karate tournaments and work as an actor in TV, film, and stage. Dr. Will has taught people all over the world the skills of NLP, hypnosis, performance enhancement, and the art of business communication. He is the founder of the National Federation of Neuro Linguistic Programming and the creator of several best-selling home study courses in NLP and hypnosis. A prolific writer, Dr. Horton's articles on NLP and hypnosis are regularly featured in the Journal of Hypnotism, the country's largest hypnosis publication, with his articles considered a must-read in the field of hypnosis and psychology. His NLP and hypnosis courses and workbooks have won acclaim for their easy-to-understand format. You will often find him on your favorite radio or television station, sharing his extensive knowledge with his audience. Will's latest books, Advanced Mind Control, Learn the Secrets of Cult Leaders and Master Manipulators, has been recently released. So, Dr. Will, tell us, what is it that first got you into hypnosis?
Well, I read a book once on hypnosis when I was in high school and thought it was fascinating. It was called Hypnosis for Change. I'll always remember the title. And it was a yellow book. And it had a script in it that you just read. And so I hypnotized a couple people, and it scared me, to be honest with you. So I really didn't do anything with it because it worked. I mean, they were doing what I told them to do. And so it was always in the back of my mind. And then, like a lot of times, life gets in the way, and I was in the military, and after I got out of the military, I became an actor. I got hurt in the military, and I became an actor, and was doing that for a couple of years. But basically, an addiction took that career away as a professional. So once I started to sober up, I went into treatment at the Veterans Administration. I was doing pretty well, but I couldn't quite really get it. I'd stay sober a little while and relapse, stay sober a little while and relapse. And then I got exposed to the NLP and the hypnosis, mainly the hypnosis side of it, by a counselor that helped me with it, and then everything clicked in and made sense. The 12-step program, the things they were doing, and it all took off. And in fact, I started doing some volunteer work at an alcohol and drug, it was a detox center, and that just one thing led to another. Excuse me. And then back in the early 80s, mid 80s, it was easier to find an NLP training than a hypnosis training.
Oh,
so
really?
I took NLP first, and it had a lot of hypnosis techniques. I didn't understand a lot why they were doing convoluted, confusing, Ericksonian-based hypnosis when I'd learned that just from the other stuff, quick hypnosis. So I'm like, that was kind of confusing. But when it all came together, then that's what got me hooked.
Okay, and then is it shortly after that you went to get your PhD in
Yeah,
psychology?
after I was working in an alcohol and drug treatment center. I was a salesperson, selling computer maintenance programs for IBM and a couple other, and doing quite well. And I decided I wanted to do something else. And I had a passion for helping people, especially in the addiction world, because it helped me. And I had the opportunity due to the government money I had. So I went back to school and got my master's and my doctorate in psychology.
Wonderful. And you never looked back, I'm sure.
No. I've been in this field consistently since 1986.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you became a trainer. And what's this about? You're the only one invited to attend the FBI Crisis Hostage Negotiation course.
Well,
how did you find yourself in there?
Well, I had some students that worked for the FBI. And as anyone knows, the true power players, they were executive assistants. That's who's the power player in any company. So they got me in to see the person that ran the hostage negotiation training, and that was called hostage negotiation. And so I got to tour the FBI Academy and talk to all these guys, and they we talked, and they invited me to come to the either the hostage negotiation or the profiling course, either one. And
I'm sure you had a lot to offer with
and
NLP.
they said, I said, well, I don't work for a police department. And they said, no, that's okay. We'd like to have you. And so I went, and I was the only person in the room. There was another psychologist, a couple of social workers, and a lot of police psychologists go through this training. But I was the only person in the room that wasn't badged. I wasn't a police officer.
Right.
I was totally independent, and it was kind of interesting. At that point I hadn't done much with criminal justice, so it was kind of interesting working in that and finding out how they do things.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how do you compare? Because a friend of mine actually created a lot of the languaging for police, because when they came out with the tasers originally in Canada, they would have to read off this long thing and people look at them and then just run. So he changed the language so that people were frozen in fear and didn't want to move.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was just a simple adjustment with NLP in the language that completely changed law.
Well, and that's what you see, like in those kind of situations. What they, if you've seen television, it's nothing like what really happens. But it's like, how they keep people on the phone, how they do this, how they wear people down,
right.
why they switch negotiators, all this. It's a science. They study it,
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's kind of cool. And the best thing I learned there, one of the things was the power of situational training, role plays. Because, they built a whole city in Quantico with different scenarios: small city, big city, bank. They have an airplane, they have a bus, and so they set things up in the scenario. Because then when you're on site, if you're practicing, then if you ever get to on site,
right,
it's not as overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like I've been here before. It's like
right.
It's like this is why it got me to go back and change some of my NLP training. I'm like,
So you do a lot of role?
Yeah, a lot of role, a lot of interpersonal stuff, and because that's what they do. And what was interesting about the thing is one of the day one, what they said was, who's a good listener? Who's a good listener? And they go, well, let's skip that. Who's a bad listener? What do you think of the top 5 bad listeners? And then everybody's sitting there and they go, well, and he goes, well, police officers are number 1. Medical doctors are number 2.
Bad listeners?
Yes.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, no, police officers, medical doctors, teachers, parents. I forget what number 5 was, but they were all whatever.
It's
and everybody's like this.
shocking.
No, they're problem solvers. They are not negotiating. They're not there to listen. They're there to fix the. If your car got stolen, you don't want the police to go, we need to look at the socio-economic impact of why these people felt like they had to steal your car.
Right.
You go, no, go thump them, get my car back.
Yeah. I get it.
So they solve the problem. So if they're going to become a negotiator, it's a totally different hat.
It's a totally different game.
So now they got to listen. They got to get the guy talking. They got to, it's like, whoa. And so they say a lot of people here may not make it because it's hard. And then it's hard to be a negotiator for them and to go back and be a cop and go back and be a regular cop because you think too much. And there's some other things you find out, like why, because when I got involved in the few things I did, they said, oh, did you do anything? No, they would not allow, only badged officers usually can be the negotiator. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And it's like, when they explain it, I go, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. So it was kind of interesting.
Oh,
Yes.
it'd definitely be interesting. But
Well, of course, like
you said,
anything, though, it's like when you're in hypnosis and NLP and everything. If you see it on a television show, the first thing you do is you pick it apart because you know the facts. It's like when after going to that, it's like now I know some stuff. I don't like watching movies about it.
I can't watch TV anymore. Well, but talk about your latest book, because that's fascinating, because talking about sciences and arts, advanced mind control, cults, master manipulators.
Yeah, when you look at how do you get people to take action? That's always the goal, right?
Right.
And so, like we talked before we started, when people take psychology, they usually take psychology because A, they think they got a problem and they think somehow education will fix it, or B, most of the people take it because they want to learn how to mess with people. That's why you people take it.
Manipulators.
Yes. And then when they get into psychology, they find out they don't teach that.
Right.
They never really teach that, you know. And so it's like, So, but there's a whole group of people that are excellent manipulators, right? Cult leaders know how to manipulate. And, you know, when you look
Hitler,
at Hitler was a fabulous communicator. I mean, you know, and he got a whole group of people to take some radical action.
Very radical.
You know, because they always say, like, you know, when you when he talked about, you know, the Third Reich and the Aryan ideal, was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy with, you know, muscles and everything, and the women were blonde with big, you know, that was his thing. Yeah. But Hitler was a 5'6", dark-haired, little sickly-looking guy.
And nobody ever made that.
But he was father. Wait, I don't think he was going to sire a 6-foot blonde boy.
Not exactly.
But he sold them on the idea because there's basically a simple process, you know, if you encourage their dreams, because from childhood your dreams are crushed. You know, like you tell your parents, I want to be an actor. That's nice, but we'll get you a real job.
Right.
You know, or whatever your dream is, it's usually crushed. So if you meet somebody that encourages that dream, it's like giving water to a dying guy.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you have to justify their failures. It's not your fault you're a failure.
We hear that in marketing.
It's not
your fault you're overweight.
Fat. Yeah, it's not your fault. Not your fault you eat at McDonald's 7 times a day.
It's not your fault you got a DUI.
Yeah, and because that really, you know, and it's like, oh, and then it goes into confirms their suspicions. You know, so you encourage their dreams, and then you, you know, justify, and then you justify their failures, and then you know, tell them why. There's people keeping it from you. That's their suspicion.
Paranoia.
Oh, yeah, the Illuminati or the Masons, some group, right? They're keeping it from you. The government, right? And then you allay their fears. I'm like you. You know, like if anybody's ever looked at internet marketing, every internet marketer, I was broke and living under a bridge. Right. And it's like, I doubt that. I mean, you know, it's like, but it's a good story.
Right.
Because I'm like you, I'm broke, I couldn't do this. You know, I always hear the radio, TV now. It's these guys trying to down in the States about flipping houses. I couldn't pay my credit cards. Now you know, whatever. You know, because then regular Joe, and then finally, you know, you create a common enemy. That's the key. If you do all 5 of those, you can. That's a cult.
Wow. So you've broken it down into.
It's very simple.
An art as well.
Oh yeah, and honestly, I've said some people say it, when they marketed The Secret, they followed each one of those steps exactly.
Really?
I was counting them off. I go, okay, you know, encourage your dreams. You want to be rich. You want to be famous. Right. It's not your fault. They kept it from you. The Illuminati, the Masons, and you know, I'm real familiar with the Masons. I'm in, you know, it's like, I don't know. We don't have any secrets. But, you know, it's like, boom, you know, and then
amazing.
And then create the common enemy.
Amazing. And the scary thing is when people like Hitler study it. I mean, if somebody, you know, means to do well and has good intentions and they're studying these 5 steps, great. But in the wrong hands.
Oh yeah. And you know, and like if you studied what Hitler did, his message bounced. You know, it was communists, it was gypsies, it was gays, then it was Jews, and he finally lumped them all together. But he needed these, and then of course the British and the French, because they emasculated Germany. Right. And you know, he rallied at the whole country.
Well, he was a master, that's for sure.
Yeah,
and it said actually that he studied hypnotism.
Oh, yeah, and if you listen to his speech patterns, even if you don't speak German, you know, it's very. And when you look
hypnotic.
at that, and when you look at the how he did the, you know, he followed. There's a great book people should read called The 48 Laws of Power, and you know, it says never give a speech, create a spectacle. When Hitler gave his speeches, they were in the stadiums with the big flames. I mean, they had lights. It was the 1930s, but the flames are primal, and the music, Wagner music, and then you know, and it was all men. But he spoke. In his book Mein Kampf, he speaks about you speak to the feminine mind, which means you speak to the emotional mind. You don't speak to logic. You know.
Yes,
and I'm like,
that makes sense.
Oh, okay. So you know, it's an interesting. I love the study. It's like fascinating.
It's very fascinating. But tell us about, because you originally got into hypnosis and NLP because you overcame an addiction, and that is probably one of the hardest things anyone will ever have to go through in life.
Yes.
Pretty much.
And it messed up my military career, and then it really destroyed my acting career. And so I went into treatment, and like a lot of people, I couldn't quite get it. I would stay sober. I was sober a little while, then a couple of years I was having trouble. And I would go to the 12-step program, and I liked it. It didn't make sense. It didn't gel, didn't coalesce for me until I got some people, like I said, this person who hypnotized me, and we did a couple of things, and it just started to make sense.
Right.
And to this day, I can't tell you exactly what she did, but I have a good idea. Mm-hmm. Because everything started to shift.
Right.
And it basically is all about, when you get into addictions, it's all about, you got to reinvent yourself.
Interesting.
You know,
okay. So you have to create a new identity.
Yes, that's why when people that don't like the 12-step programs, because you're switching addictions. Well, I never got arrested for drinking too much coffee at an AA meeting,
Yeah,
but
they serve a lot of coffee and sweets and sugar.
But still, it's, it's like, and what it is, there's a lot of things, if you study it. And then, to me, it gets fascinating, right? And I'm jumping ahead, but after I got into all this, after about 20 years, I pulled back and looked at, why do the people that sober up, what do they do different than those that don't sober up? Because the success rate's horrible. 10-12% in most treatment centers, even the ones out that say they're higher. Horrible. You have the same statistical probability of staying sober walking into an AA meeting with no treatment as going to the best center in America. Or
really?
Canada. Yes. Wow. Right? At least that used to be the statistics. So anyway, what do they do different? Well, there's some structural things from talking to people that have been sober a long time. They reinvent themselves. Mm-hmm. And one of the things the 12-step program gives you, and when people say they don't like it because people are, you're labeling yourself an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a blonde male. What? It doesn't really matter, But it's a label you can work with, and then it's about, creating a new you.
Well, obviously the old one wasn't working, and that's why people were drinking. Right.
And then that's my problem with some people who say, I can get you to, we'll just do this, this, and this, and you won't have to make any other changes. You'll just quit drinking. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Right? I want to see this. I always say that because I haven't seen a long-term, people say that, right? And they say, oh, yeah. And I go, well, do you follow up? Do you really know if these people are doing well? Because, plus if you really change, the lifestyle changes, right? You're not interested in the lifestyle. And one of the things you hear people talk about when they sober up is, even if they do go around their old friends don't want you around. You're no fun anymore. Oh, you're not the one.
I'm not a big drinker.
Well, you're not the one buying, usually, buying the drinks and the life of the party. Now you're pretty normal.
Right. And they don't want to be around you if you're normal.
And one of the things, once I shifted, one of the things I noticed, like, when I first sobered up, I didn't do theater for a while. I thought, well, maybe, you always look for, justify your failures. It's not me. It was the acting world. No, I was a schmuck that just drank too much no matter where I was. So I didn't do theater. And then I meditated and prayed about it and said, well, if something's supposed to happen, something weird will happen about theater. And then I get a call to be in a play from some people I never met, right? Mm-hmm. So I get there and nobody drank. They took the craft serious, acting, right? So I thought it was fun. And then I started getting back into it, and I noticed I had changed, because when I got in a show, I would be drawn to the people that would not drink, or the sane, sober people. I wouldn't be drawn to the partiers. And that really became obvious. I did a show in Florida, a big show, Titanic, a big operetta musical, right? And I get in this thing, and there were some hard partiers in there. And that was where it was like, and you saw the partiers over here, of all ages, sexes, and sexual orientations, that didn't matter. But, and I'm standing there, and for the first time, it was like I was disassociated. I'm like, wow. But before, I would have been drawn to that lifestyle. Yeah. Right? And now it's like, no,
So lifestyle changes.
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock, rehearsals. I'm going home.
Right, I'm going home and rest so I can be the best me tomorrow.
We have a matinee tomorrow at 3 or 1. We better be ready.
And so what else has to change?
Well, you have
addiction.
Then you have to change your identity, and you have to change, that core. So drinking's not an option, and it's not even a consideration. And then the thing that has to change around you, and sometimes the only way to change that is by removing yourself from it, but not just your family or friends, but sometimes your family.
Mm-hmm. The enablers.
Yeah, if they don't, they'll be the ones like, I liked you better when you were drunk.
Right.
Your kids might say it, your wife might say it, or your husband might say it, because the one thing that happens, they can't manipulate you anymore.
Right, because you're not you don't feel guilty anymore.
Right. And
Right.
in the NLP world, one of the people they studied was Virginia Satir, who was a systems therapist. And she talked about when one part of a system changes, everything changes.
Sure, certainly.
And so if you quit drinking, you may not be the person I want to be with.
Well, they're used to you one way, and then all of a sudden you change, and you just don't fit together anymore.
Right.
Right. It's like in personal growth, one person may be on the path to personal growth and curious and excited, and the other person just wants to stay where they are and wants nothing in their life to change. So you become incompatible at some point.
Well, yeah, and what you see a lot, like when people start to sober up, a lot of them have to get some kind of family counseling if they're married, or because there's a lot of resentment. I asked you to quit drinking for 20 years and you didn't do it. Now you got to go to these meetings, and you're gone every night but you're only gone a couple. But still, it's like there's that jealousy that that these other people did something for you that I couldn't do. Right. And I don't do marriage counseling because the blind should not lead the blind. But and you hear that, it's like you didn't love me enough to quit drinking.
I guess that's why they have Al-Anon in groups like
that.
that.
Yeah, and probably, I don't know what the actual statistics are. I'd say it's got to be very high that it's the spouse of the addicted person that wants out after the other person sobers up.
Interesting.
Could be loss of control. It could be, it could be a lot of issues.
That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So what else do people typically come to hypnosis for?
Well, you always get the big three, weight loss, smoking, and stress. I did a lot of sports. I mean, yes, because I was, I'm an athlete. Played football in high school, year semi-pro, somewhere in there. Boxed in the Army, and some other things. So I always liked athletics. And then when I got in hypnosis, I found that hypnosis is one of the few areas where it's actually embraced by clinical psychology for sports and performance. I got to go study with a guy named Bruce Ogilvie, one of the godfathers of sports psychology, sports performance psychology. And, he talked about, they didn't quite call it hypnosis, but,
guided visualization.
Yeah, and imagery and role play, mental role play over and over again, But, I mean, now it's out there, and it's kind of cool because you can help people in a sport. And one of the things I find fascinating, I can help people in sports I don't really like.
Okay. So what do you mean?
Like, I don't like golf. I don't get golf.
Yeah, but I guess you just need to know the structure of their thinking.
Yeah, I'm not there to improve their swing.
Right.
That ain't my job. If they have a sports, if their golf instructor says do this, this, and this, okay, just let me know what they said.
Okay.
And usually when I was doing when my clinical practice was big, they'd come in, I had a couple of golf pros send me people. They had a little note, this is what he needs to work on. I can just work it in, And a lot of it's just quit thinking.
Yeah, I think people think too much.
I mean, like you hear Tiger Woods when he's still good, but when he was at the top of his game, he goes, well, the thing you have to learn is you can't replay the last hole and you can't play the next hole. Mm-hmm. You're right here, right now.
Present. He has to be really present.
And I'm like, and you hear that, I'm still a big football fan, and, you hear that with the elite, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, that was last game. It's gone.
And that's true with life, actually.
Yeah.
When we either live in the past or live in the future, we're really doing a number on ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. And so that's, sports and, mental attitude, mental outlook, because there's, again, sports psychology's really studied the psychology of high performers. Mm-hmm. They're able to focus on a task, able to block out distractions.
Right, to stay highly focused.
Highly focused on the task at hand.
Hypnotic state.
Yeah, highly focused, because, and whether you're a weekend warrior or when you think about like pro sports, how do these guys, they're in like a basketball player, there's 30,000 people in the stands, there's TV cameras, the backboard that they're making the free throw is glass, and they're waving things, girls are flashing, and they're totally, that distraction doesn't get to you.
Well, they take control of their focus and really stay focused. That's amazing. So what have you seen in hypnosis that's maybe a little unusual? Has anything bizarre ever happened in hypnosis sessions?
Oh, yeah.
People's mind taking a totally different direction than you thought?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about some of those.
Well, one of the funnest was it was in a class. So I was doing a demo, right? So I'm up there doing the demo. And it was called the drop down through technique, where you drop underneath feelings and you keep going till you get to the core feeling. And, because if you do that, what's kind of cool is, like, let's say a person has an anger issue. They drop underneath anger. What's underneath anger? Could be anything. What's under that? Probably fear. What's under that? And eventually you get to a state of love, right? I mean, it's just, even without setting it up, that's just people get to, because they say there's two emotions, fear and love. And so I was doing this technique on this girl, and, we drop down and she gets stuck, right? And it's like, and I ended up having to do a spirit depossession.
What?
Because I'm like, well, what's going on? There's demons, there's this, there's that. I don't know where her mind went. But it was a great teaching tool, because I was just like you are now. It's like, okay, we just kept doing this. I kept all I was trying to do was counter up then. And it's like, I'm not here to do, but she wouldn't come up. She got stuck in a cycle, right? Wow. And I knew enough from gathering my information beforehand that she was from Latin America and Catholic.
They have a big belief in that.
So I'm like, okay. And then finally, I got down and said, okay, the Archangel Michael's coming and he's going to, pick you up in his arms and whatever, slay the demons. And I mean, I'm into all that, but it's like, it just was totally out of context. And it's like, whoa, that was weird.
And in the end, she was depossessed, I take it.
Yeah, she felt great. Yeah, it's like, as Ron Burgundy would say, that escalated quickly, from Anchorman. And so, and then, I've had other, and then just some other really fun stuff. One time I was doing a stage show, and at a college, and this was a long time ago, but I had a couple guys on the football team. This big, huge guy who played like he's a defensive tackle. So he's this big, huge guy, right? And I'm doing the stage hypnosis bit. You're your favorite singer, and you're really going to work it. You're going to be your favorite singer. So people are doing that. He unbuttons his shirt, ties it up, and he starts doing Shania Twain.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
And I'm like, boy, I hope your friends know you're... It was no problem. It's just, but it was like, that was... Again, it's like...
You gave him permission.
That's
you
strange.
Opened that little box.
Well, you and I know he wouldn't have done it if he, if he didn't want.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important for people to know, that you don't do anything under hypnosis you don't want.
Yeah, well, what happened to me one time in a stage show, I was, I volunteered, so I like to be hypnotized. I wouldn't trust a stage hypnotist that won't go on a stage show. So I'm up there and I'm having fun, and the guy gets me up. Two things happen. One is he goes, the bit where hold your hand up and give me a drink. It's the best alcohol you ever had. You're going to be whatever.
Uh-oh.
Well, I wouldn't raise my hand.
Sure. Yeah.
And he goes, taps me. He goes, taps me. And I go, and I was just about to come up, just come out of trance. And he knew enough to say, that's okay, just sleep.
Right.
And then he went on. Then later on, he brought me up and said, you're auditioning for a big Broadway show. And at the count of 3, you're going to break out into a song. 1, 2, 3. I didn't do anything. 1, 2, 3. I didn't do anything. Oh, that's okay. Just sit down. He goes, you must be shy. Da, 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 da. And people come up after. They go, I'm surprised you didn't start singing.
I'm kind of shocked too.
I was searching for what song I can sing a cappella.
Oh, so you just didn't,
I was in search mode.
Right. Right.
Peter gave me one more. I was ready to break out, into Comedy Tonight or something.
He needed to give you some time. That was all. You just need a little time.
So I've had him on my side, and then, and I, you know what, going back to right after when I was first really getting into hypnosis and NLP, someone did a past life on me.
Oh, tell us about that, because that
one I went
so interesting.
Interesting, you know. And one, well, they did a couple of them, and one of them was and this would make sense why I've always been in the military mindset. I like the military. I like martial arts. I'm a 4th degree black belt, even with bad legs, all this other stuff. Well, in a past life, I was a samurai, and samurais were not nice guys, right? And my thing was, I wouldn't kill you if you weren't really a threat. I would slice your Achilles tendons in the back of your knee.
So you could never.
So you'd never fight. You'd never be a threat to me. And now I got these bad legs.
Oh, really?
It's like maybe
so it wasn't an injury from the military.
Yeah. I blew my knees out, but it's like I've got like
karma.
A locked leg, and
Karma.
I'm like, I wonder if that's karma from my past life.
So I've done many past life regressions, and I still have that question in my mind. Is it the unconscious making up a metaphor so the person understands why they have something?
Or is it real?
The jury's out, because when people are going through it, the expressions on their face, the wonder when something, it looks real.
Oh, yeah.
It looks real.
Yeah.
And they're as shocked as we are watching it as the hypnotist.
Oh, yeah. I did one. A lady wanted me to do one on her. And I said, okay, right. And she had fear of water, not like life-threatening or anything, but she didn't like water. And so she just wanted a past life. So I usually don't do those, but
why not?
I don't know. Honestly, my schedule was probably open. I said, sure. And so she came in, we started doing it, and she drowned in a past life.
Well, that's what I mean.
And that's why she wouldn't go in.
Fear.
And then I'm sitting there going, and I remember, I forget who it was. It was one of the ladies that used to teach past lives, and she was a psychologist. Names on the tip of my tongue. But when I heard she said that, she goes, so is it real? Is it a real past life? Or is it, like you say, the subconscious filling in the blank? Who cares?
Yeah, in the
She could go swimming. This lady could go swimming then.
Exactly.
She couldn't go swimming because the question was, well, how old were you when you drowned? Like, I think she said 40. I go, well, how old are you now? Well, I'm 43. You didn't drown.
Right.
I had no idea. I'm not a past life person. That's Georgina, these other people. Okay, so she went swimming.
And that's the amazing thing. Everybody that I've worked with has got such beneficial results, actually mind-blowing results.
Well, you know what? There's a new, one of my thoughts about it is, if you get into quantum psychology, right, thoughts are things. And thoughts generate, and that there's a quantum consciousness, right? That, like a consciousness it's like the massive cloud of our intellects, right? And so all this is up there, right? So I forget who said this, right? But it would make sense that one of the things you could think about past lives is something happens and your neurology, and that is just close enough to that thought pattern that it downloads with what already happened. It's not exactly, but it makes sense.
And you make it make sense to you.
Yes. And it's
I've never heard that theory.
Yeah, and that's why, because that's why the guy that said it, and then I've been thinking about it because I like quantum psychology,
right.
And so I'm sitting there going, this makes sense. So I started reading on it, and I was thinking sort of along those lines that it's that, which would also make sense when someone's doing a past life, that they're a peasant, that they're a normal person that died a horrible death. It sounds bad, but it's like, how many Napoleons?
Sure.
How many times is Napoleon going to come back?
Right.
And, it's like, that makes sense to me.
Because we all have aspects of those within us anyway. Or, I like your theory. I've never heard that theory before. It's so... Tell us more about quantum psychology.
Well, it's based on, loosely on quantum physics, that everything's vibration and that everything's connected. That's really what it's based on, right? If the Big Bang happened when everything was connected and bursts out, and so everything's still connected. And in quantum physics, if two items are in contact and then they're separated, if something happens to one, this one will be affected regardless of space. Right. And they also think time, right? So if this happens, right? But then it also leads, now that they know that thoughts create things, so you can connect with people mentally and do this. It's kind of like, you ever hear that saying that if you want to guess someone's income, if you know what the 5 people they hang out with the most income is, they're probably in that ballpark. And that has to do with quantum energy. It's like when you start, you're drawn toward, and things are drawn toward you that have the same vibrational pattern, right?
Right.
And this makes sense. It's also why you see in the metaphysical world, when people start getting into metaphysics and New Age thinking and all this other stuff, they don't have to leave their old friends. Their old friends leave them.
Just
and
like
they're drawn
addictions,
to, and we're at a conference this weekend. You're recording this at a conference. Why are there going to be, 200-300 people here? It's we search for like, and it,
And if there's no space or time with the whole past life thing, then it doesn't matter if this happened 800 years ago.
Right.
There's no such thing as space or time, so it's like that thing you say you're gonna gravitate or.
And then you can, and then if you want to if you want to get your income up, is okay. If your 5 friends aren't rich, what if you mentally make 5 friends that are rich that you kind of know?
Okay, and
Right. Especially if you could just meet them in passing. So if you know 2, 3, 4 millionaires, if that becomes your mental group, I don't know, that one I think people should play with.
Okay. So speaking of playing with things, what have you seen that just is inexplicable, that maybe even astounded you? Because as hypnotists, we're like, well, I'll try that, and then you're like, wow, I can't believe the results of that. I'm constantly getting my mind sort of like amazed at the things that that are possible. Like I've done things where people have healed skin conditions in just one session.
Oh yeah. Well, it's in clinical psych. They have the thing about the multiple personalities, where one is allergic to orange juice and the other's not.
And how can that be?
And they'll actually have to break out the histamine response, the neurotransmitters, and all that. So we're just doing that with hypnosis. And which one in my clinical practice was probably one of the most interesting? Well, I'm always fascinated with, when I used to do a lot of addictions, about who would, even when I started to change everything, it's like, who's going to make it and who's going to miss.
Okay.
And I was always surprised.
Oh,
half the time I was surprised.
And how come?
Because some of the people that did the best were the ones that were the ones that fought you on everything. Fought me on everything.
That's why they're fighters.
And they're thinking about it.
Right.
They're not just saying yes, yeah. Well, there's nothing worse than a placater. Yes, yes, but they're not going to do it. I still remember the one lady who and you know what? This is cool for most hypnotists, because I love when I be around people and they'll say, because when I had my last clinic really going, it was 75% weight loss, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is an addiction in itself.
Well, yeah, and all that, but it was low-hanging fruit for hypnotists. It's easy. If 60% of the population want to lose weight, well, I'm gonna help you lose weight. And so I had all these people in my office, and this one lady, she came to me. She'd had gastric bypass surgery, and back then they called it stomach stapling, in the early 80s, and she lost, I don't know, 150 pounds, but she put it all back on, right, through time. So now it's like in early 2000s, and so we start working and we go through this, and she did like 12 sessions over 12 weeks. Then I did some follow-ups, and anyway, I didn't really, you kind of lose touch, to be honest. And then she comes in right before I sold that office, and she had lost 110 pounds. And she changed so much, it was remarkable, because she changed everything in her life.
Well, she reinvented herself.
Yeah. And how powerful that was. So when I'm around hypnotists, a lot of them say, I don't like to do weight loss. I go, oh my gosh, some of the best clients, when you watch people that have had a weight issue forever, or, from a fat little kid,
And that's a total change in mindset.
Oh,
because
yeah.
food is involved in everything.
Yeah, and like with my addictions, I haven't had a drink in 31 years, right? 32. And I'm fine, but you got to eat.
And
it's part of culture, even
and not
more.
to mention, there's a a fast food restaurant or
On
a
every
variety
corner.
store on every corner, so you're constantly walking by that. It is a big challenge because with cigarettes or alcohol, it's on or off.
Yeah.
With food,
Yeah, and now it's
it's
like,
always in your face.
yeah, and so it's just so empowering to do that with people. So that part, I always enjoyed doing weight loss. I still do some.
Do you do any medical hypnosis or work with health?
Yeah, right now I'm working with an anti-aging doctor.
Oh, tell me about this because
Well,
did you ever hear about that research where they took a bunch of older people, I guess 60s
oh
or
yeah,
70s,
yeah.
they put them back in I guess a retreat center where everything looked the same
From the
back
1950s.
then.
Yep.
And they actually physically shifted.
Yeah, it's Langer. Dr. Langer wrote the book Counterclockwise. That's the book you're talking.
Okay, yeah.
And that was done in the 70s when it was hard to duplicate this stuff. And they've duplicated that study since. The people got younger, they took less meds, they were bouncing around. And when I tell that to people, sometimes they go, well, I go, but this is why when you listen to an oldies song, you'll feel different. You'll
younger.
physiologically feel different. Whatever music was your impactful years, right? Usually high school or college or right after that. That's your oldies. And when you listen to it in context, I had a spontaneous regression, right? I'm driving along. I'm coming back from the National Guild of Hypnotists convention. It's in the middle of August. I got to set this up, right, if you're a hypnotist. So I'm in the middle of August, driving. It's summertime, windows down, sunroof's back, and I have Sirius Radio, right? So I'm listening to the 70 station, and they do that Casey Kasem's Top 40. And when they were playing it, they were not only playing that, they were even playing some of the commercials from the time. They quit doing that since. So I'm sitting there and I'm driving. So it's like I've been driving for several hours because it was in Boston. I live in Florida, but for some reason I drove that year. Anyway, I park at this rest area. And, I've been sitting there. I've been in this car for 5 or 6 hours. And I've had, this knee rebuilt 3 times, this one scoped, hip shot out, all kinds of stuff. But I jumped out of the car, ran up the hill to go to the bathroom, got my Diet Coke, jumped over the fence, come running down the hill, and I'm standing there thinking, what the hell just happened?
Wow.
I was in the same mindset, and I was thinking about people I haven't thought of since high school. Because I went in the Army right after high school, so this was the time where you got ready for summer camp for football.
Right, and you were in the best shape ever.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like...
You're like, wait, I'm not supposed to be able to do that, knees?
Yeah, I should have kept it, but it was pretty fascinating. And so this anti-aging doctor, he's big on making sure that people want to change their mindset. To think young is, because I'm always thinking when people go, you've met people that are old before their time, and then you meet people that stay young forever. And a lot of that's the mindset.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So I'm doing some work with him.
Here's what I think. Here's my personal theory around this. Just because I am aging. But we're hypnotized to believe we're supposed to age. So when something happens, like, for example, I said, my eyesight's never going to go. And it did actually start to go where I have to wear little glasses. Then you actually start to feel old. Like you're making images of yourself a little older. And you're like, well, I'm so-and-so age now. And I wear glasses. Like, I'm actually starting to feel old. Not because I feel old, but because all the things they say are going to come true. And it's making me, in a way, believe it. So if we never believed we got old, we might not.
Well, that's when they look at, they're always looking at like this group in Russia or the ones in China that, they live to be 110 or 20 and they're bouncing around. And they so focus on what is their food or what is this. They don't focus on how do they think. And then the only thing I read was the thing out of that part of Japan where people live old. And the person goes, well, you just keep going till you die. That was their attitude. It was, which is much different. You just keep going till you die. and then it just stops. And they don't go through long, painful deaths. We're also being programmed, you want to get into that, we're being programmed into long, painful, expensive deaths.
Yes, you're right, because a lot of people...
Let's keep them that last 6 months on life support. But, so when you look at those cultures, they're just gone.
And
they go to bed,
Yeah.
What's my favorite saying? I just want to wake up dead.
And I often ask people that I see, like friends, friends' mothers and things like that I notice, despite the fact that they're 85, overweight, they just have this attitude. So I ask them about their attitude, and they basically say, well, I just learned to go with life and let things in the past be. And they just have this certain kind of attitude where they don't let anything bother them.
It's funny you mentioned that. Just last night I was talking to my wife, and she was talking about Betty White. I forget what she saw Betty White in.
She's a great example.
And she's 93. She just did another TV show or movie or something. And I'm like, well, yeah, Kirk Douglas was still acting into his 90s. Robert Redford's making more movies now than he ever did. And you ask him why. He's, well, because I can.
Yeah. And why not?
You got to do, what am I going to do?
So we'll figure out the mindset for the aging
yeah,
thing, because
I'm around these theater people that, when people go, your memory goes, I go, I don't know. I just directed a play, and the lead lady was like 72, and she had never missed a line, never missed a cue. So it's like, you could do it.
I think we make excuses, like I saw myself doing. Oh, well, that's because I'm getting older. So it's in a way you're accepting it, because I noticed even I'm like accepting the mass hypnosis about age and what happens.
And with that too, it's like with memory. One of the things I read a lot, as you can tell. The memory experts talk about, well, are you forgetting more? Probably, but you have more information coming at you in a month than your great-grandparents had in a lifetime.
Right.
So how can you? Our brains is not caught up with the technology.
And the speed.
And that's why we get around these actors, and this is general. They've always said this, they still do. When they're getting ready for a movie or a play, they don't watch much TV. They're not starting to read a new book. They're focused on the task at hand,
Right.
And that's one thing, Robert Redford said once. It's like, no, now I got to get ready for,
And I think maybe part of the reason people forget is because they haven't, the brain is a muscle. You've got to train it. If you let it go flaccid, it's like stopping going to the gym for a couple of years, gaining 50 pounds.
It's harder to get in shape than stay in shape.
Yeah, it's not going to work. So I think people get caught up in this television sedentary lifestyle, and they just don't use their brain, and therefore it just goes flaccid.
Yeah.
So I think that's more probably why people's memories go when they're aging rather than
and they talk themselves into it. We have some friends. So we live in Florida, and we moved 20-something years ago, because I wanted to get there when I'm young enough to enjoy it. I don't want to go to the sunshine to die. So anyway, we got friends now starting to come down, and a couple were at our house one time, and they started saying something. Well, my wife went, shut up. She's my age. She still flies on the trapeze, rides her horse, does that. I still do martial arts and my acting, my theater, it's like you say, and
you're keeping busy, your mind active and your brain active.
And again, what's your energy? If you're around people that this is normal, that's what you're going to do. If you're into that quantum, all my friends work out, stay in shape, do this.
Even if they're 80.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you use the hypnosis for your karate tournaments?
Well, a lot of it for pain control.
Oh, because
my
of
knees
your
always
injuries.
hurt.
Yeah. So.
And a part of that was reframing. And part of that, I did not drink. I would love to say I thought this up. Right?
Okay.
But it was a karate teacher. His name was Nishiyama. I think he's passed on now. But he was like 70-something. And somebody asked him, like, how do you keep training? Doesn't it hurt? And he goes, you're going to hurt. I can't do the Japanese accent. You're going to hurt whether you do stuff or not. You might as well do stuff.
Oh, that's a great attitude.
And I'm like, because it's true. I mean, some of my friends that don't work out, they complain more about their health than I do.
Yeah.
And it's like, so.
Yeah, and plus they're focusing on all the things that are wrong.
Yeah, and I used a lot for my. I had to have other people hypnotize me for my, to focus on the task at hand.
So keeping really like in that zone,
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Yeah.
Good. So the mind is a powerful thing.
Yes.
So if you had something to share with our audience that you really believe is really, really super important for them to know about their minds, what would it be? And just tell our audience.
The fact that it is your mind, it's not anyone else's mind, that you create your own happiness. You have to claim your own happiness. It's not for anybody else to do that. And you have to really realize what's going to make you happy at the core level. And, it might not be another car or a new house or a new toy. It might be just that change of attitude, that change of outlook. And usually the way to do that is to help other people on their path, because the more you help others, the more you just help yourself. And as Zig Ziglar says, you can get anything you want if you help other people get what they want. And but it's your life. Take control of it, and don't give it to the mass marketers and the people we were talking about with the mind manipulators that are out there. So just take charge of your own life.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been an
Thank
absolute
you.
pleasure.